Hi everyone, we're continuing on looking at how to overcome a crisis. What have I called this?
Grow in a crisis.
Grow in a crisis. I keep forgetting the title. Grow in times of crisis. And today we want to look at the next part of that verse, which is...
My Father's house.
Yeah.
There are many mansions.
Yes, from John chapter 14. So we're busy going through John chapter 14. And I believe this isn't just showing us how to overcome a crisis, but it's showing us how to prepare for the next season. Because the way that we respond in crisis determines how things will be on the other side, and how more quickly we get into the next season, or how things, it doesn't determine the whole next season, but it definitely helps us get into that next season. So he says, let not your heart be troubled. Jesus speaking. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I wouldn't have told you. I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, you may also be. And where I go, you know the way, and the way you know. And what we really get out of that is really that God or Jesus is saying it's about perspective. The way to overcome today so that you can get to tomorrow is perspective. Jesus is saying, hey, in my Father's house are many mansions. He's trying to turn the disciples' attention off of now and putting it on to the future. And this is an eternal perspective that he's giving. For us as believers, we can't just be living for the next season. We can't just be living for tomorrow. We've got to be living with eternity in mind. It's so important that we're not given into the panic and the fear and the troubles that we could be experiencing in this life, but that we're having an eternal perspective of, one day in 10,000 years time, when I'm with Jesus, what I'm experiencing today will only be a distant memory, if a memory. Even in light of this life, in a year's time, things will be different than it is today. In 10 years' time, it'll be different than it is today. So, if you adopt a healthy perspective on your current situation, it'll help you get through today and prepare you and set you up for tomorrow.
When Jesus says in that first verse, let not your heart be troubled, we spoke about that 2 days ago. It can feel so easy to say, but how? How do you do that? But he goes on in the second verse to say, you believe in God, believe also in me. So by trusting him in his goodness and his love, you let not your heart be troubled. But then, like Shane said, this is the second way to not let your heart be troubled, to protect your heart from the fear and the despair, is to see this long term. It's so easy when you're caught up, and this is just works with everyday things. If you're caught up in this 5 minutes and how angry you are about what's happening at the moment, even if it's just a dropped egg on the floor, it's so easy to be overwhelmed. Where if you see it in a long space of time, that tomorrow, next week, next year, but eternity, it becomes so small, and all those emotions fall into their rightful places. When someone has just had a baby and maybe they're not sleeping much at night, it can feel like the end of the world. It can feel like you're dying.
Yeah.
Because you just completely sleep deprived. But if you look at that baby and you realize pretty soon that baby's going to be walking and talking and sleeping through the night, pretty soon that baby's going to be going off to college, it's easy to deal with the emotions and the struggles and the overwhelmedness of the moment. So Jesus is encouraging us that even though it feels like not everything is okay at the moment, everything is okay and everything is going to be okay, and that can put our hearts at rest.
One of the things that you can add into this is, what's the worst thing that could happen? Like, the situation is bad, and let's say this corona chaos gets completely out of hand, which I don't believe it is going to, and let's say the whole world, we all just die. For us as believers, praise God, we're going to be with Jesus for eternity. So it's like, if you have a biblical perspective, an eternal perspective, a Jesus perspective, nothing should upset you. Nothing. Because, hey, what's the worst thing that could happen? We die and go and be with Jesus. That's not so bad, because that's where we're heading anyway. So we want to encourage you today to have an eternal perspective on life right now, on how things are going. Don't just focus at the troubles that you're experiencing now. they came and they're going to go. So having a perspective that, hey, this is all going to change eventually. Eventually things will be different. And even if they don't, which they will, but even if they don't, I'll be okay because I'm living for eternity. I'm not just living for today. And it might mean that you need to go and sit down and just have a perspective change. You know, stop focusing on the shortages and the lack that you're seeing, and start, deciding to put your focus in on, hey, this is going to end, and your focus in on, hey, I'm living for eternity. And we trust that this encourages you in your today.
Have a
Awesome.
great day.
Bye.